In today's episode, we will look at how and why we developed our own framework for ethical AI here at Acuity Insights. Let's talk about holistic success. Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Dore, co-founder and VP of Science and Innovation at Acuity Insights. Welcome to this episode of the Holistic Success Show. Here with me today is Dr. Rodica Ivan, who is the research scientist here at Acuity Insights. Rodica researches current and potential assessments and tools here at Acuity, and she's also worked closely with so many of our partner programs. Rodica has been doing research on ethical AI and the risks and benefits of AI that it might bring to higher education and more broadly. I am so excited to talk to Rodica today because not only does she bring a great perspective to this, but she's also talked to so many programs who are looking at AI and understands the potential implications. Thank you for joining us, Rodica, and I'm really looking forward to a great discussion.
Hi, Kelly. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so thankful for us having the time.
Me too. I appreciate you taking the time. It is really great to have you on the show and to be talking about an ethical AI framework. So, Rodica, let's start from the beginning. What is an ethical AI framework?
Yeah, that's a great starting point. So let's start with the purpose of these frameworks, which is to ensure that the AI that we use and develop is in alignment with human values. And such frameworks basically consist of a set of actionable ethical principles, which can be applied at different stages of either AI development or AI use by, for instance, considering key questions that you care about that are aligned with these values, like who will be impacted by the algorithm? And the purpose, of course, is to mitigate potential risks. So it's a framework like any other ethical framework. It's just applied to AI tools.
I think that's so exciting, Rodica, because I know the world is talking about AI and implications and use cases and exciting things, maybe some less exciting things it can do as well, but also some of the risks. And I know in talking to faculty and to students and everybody else, there are a lot of different perspectives on whether we should or shouldn't, or how we should engage with AI and what we should do, the implications for its future growth and things like that. So it's a really great starting point for folks that maybe have different people with different perspectives on AI. I'm curious about what was the trigger for starting to develop an ethical AI framework here at Acuity.
Actually, believe it or not, it was the launch of ChatGPT in November 2022. So it was at the 30th of November 2022. We were just like everybody else, right? We were just shocked, I guess, at the capacity of this tool. And internally, our research team had been working on a few machine learning research projects so we could envision some of the benefits and concerns of AI in education in some distant future. But these were research projects and not actual AI implementations like ChatGPT, which I'm sure you know when it was launched, it was quite clear that large language models like this one would be used more and more across different disciplines, and that would have profound implications for students, faculty, curriculum, and assessments. So we wanted to make sure that we at Acuity learn as much as we can about this topic and really consider how AI might impact education and our organization as an EdTech company.
I think there's a lot of consideration. AI is changing so fast and its potential. I know when it started, we were still all amazed, and now we continue to be amazed. And I think also now starting to really think about the practical. How could I use this, or should I use this in my classroom? What expectations am I setting for students and for faculty for using AI? What expectations am I setting for using this in the community? What are the resource implications of using AI? We've talked about, the power it uses relative to other search engines and things like that. So all of these considerations are floating around, not just in the exciting, how could I potentially use it, but, where and should. What was the process that you used to create an ethical AI framework? Because I imagine for folks, it can be a little bit daunting. Some folks want to jump right in with all the potential. Some folks, thinking about creating an ethical framework is a little bit daunting. So where did you start for this?
I think daunting is a good good description. I think it was very daunting for us as well, because there is already a lot of information on this topic. Even though ChatGPT came out at the end of November, AI has been a thing for a long time, and so have concerns about AI. So we started with 3 or 4 months of literature review. We read up on guidelines from different countries and institutions, from the governments of the US, Canada, Australia, from guidelines from the EU, UNESCO, and leading tech company best practices. And we also read various books on ethical and responsible AI, took courses, and went to workshops like those offered by the Digital Governance Council of Canada. So a lot of learning, but this review helped us determine the main themes that overlap in these ethical frameworks of this kind. So if you're going to start a review like this, you are bound to see that, certain themes appear more commonly than others, and that includes AI fairness, the reliability of the tool, the responsibility and accountability that humans have to hone and, really pay attention to. Data privacy and security, the explainability of the AI model. Basically, can you explain it to the lay audience? And transparency in communication. And that's how we got closer to our 5 key principles. But the process, is much, much longer.
Okay, so now what did you learn from all of this, and what did you take away?
So other than, the key themes that overlap across these frameworks, an important lesson that we gleaned from all of this research was how necessary it was to have different perspectives involved, not only in the design and development of AI tools, but also in the creation of this ethical framework proper. And we're at Acuity, so we do believe this, but this is true for AI as well. Everybody brings their own lived experiences and insights, and that's quite important when trying to ensure that, AI, this systematic objective measure, is designed and developed for the greater good in alignment with human values. So we want those inherently humanistic values at the forefront. So for this reason, our process was to have a team of 5 researchers considering each of the 5 principles in more depth. Each of us focused on a principle and compiled and developed questions relevant to this principle from the various sources we consulted. And then we met, we discussed, we chatted, we edited, we chatted with a larger team, we edited some more. And then a couple of months in, to include even more perspectives, we talked to the larger organization, we shared the principles, we gathered feedback, and we also had monthly meetings with a working group with members from different teams so they can incorporate their insights into our framework. And then I think this was maybe 6 months in, we developed the questions, and then we piloted the framework in a hypothetical scenario. So a group of 8 different colleagues from different teams pretended we were currently developing an AI tool, and we had to draft answers for these questions. And then we took the feedback from that and iterated and made the questions even better. And then lastly, we started sharing the principles and key questions in different communications, workshops, and gathered feedback from larger audiences outside of Acuity. Because like you said, Kelly, AI is ever evolving, and so do the ethical implications around it, which is why we have to view this framework more as a living document rather than a project we can just, put a bow on.
I like that because, again, it is so big. So it's about progress rather than perfection, and seeing it as something that is now no longer going to change. What I heard from that too, Rodica, which I love, is we were able to take a very research oriented approach, which we love at Acuity, but also then we tried to make it very practical. What does this look like if we were actually trying to apply it? Which means, for those folks who are very excited and want to dive right into AI, it actually does allow you to move a little bit faster in your AI implementation after you've created this framework. So we slowed down a little bit in order to be able to speed up on the long-term journey is sort of what I heard from that.
Yeah, that's very fair, Kelly.
And so now this has been a lot of work, but I think a really great outcome for not just for Acuity, but for, those thinking about how would you develop something like this? What could it look like? What would this look like in your organization? How does this framework work? What are, sort of the high level contents? I know there's probably a lot of detail within it, but sort of at a high level, how would you describe it?
So at a high level, those 5 principles that, again, we defined based on our lit review and what aligns with our values at Acuity are as follows. So these are our principles. Essentially, we should strive to ensure that AI tools are fair and potential biases and inequities can be mitigated. Secondly, we want to ensure that results are reliable and that the AI tools perform as intended, that we have strategies in place to responsibly assess and address any potential risks. We want to make sure that user data is secure and that security guidelines are upheld. And lastly, and this is actually very important, we want to make sure that users have access to clear explanations of how the AI tools work, because one of the biggest concerns is that we don't trust it, right? We don't trust the AI. We don't know how it works. So we don't know what it does, which is why it's so important to involve everybody in the process. And across these 5 principles, we compiled a list of, it's going to sound like a lot, 127 questions. And the purpose of these questions is to prompt and encourage more intentional deliberation when designing and developing and implementing these tools. Again, it sounds like a lot. So I'm just going to do a little deep dive in one of the themes. So let's say we're talking about fairness, and the goal is to detect, document, monitor, that's important, and mitigate biases in the training and output data, and ensure that the algorithms apply and uphold our standards for fairness. Okay. So to help pursue this goal, one thing we can do is consider these questions. So for fairness itself, we have about 20 different questions just for AI fairness. And one such question is, what populations will be impacted by the AI system and what are potential harms? And a follow-up to that could be, have members from these communities been consulted? Have you talked to them? Do you know how they feel about these risks? And this particular question can be asked at the design stage by someone who's developing a tool, but it can also be considered by someone who's debating using a new AI tool they just heard about. So let's say, oh my God, Sora from OpenAI just came out. I want to use it. I just want to make sure that the impacts are either minor or that they're mitigated before I go ahead and use the tool. This is true for many of the questions in our framework. They can be considered at multiple stages of AI development, but they're also relevant for how we use AI on a day-to-day basis. And we can provide a link in the resources to a short paper we published in the APA Division 5 newsletter that goes over each of the 5 principles in a bit more detail and how they can be applied in education.
That's awesome. And I want to sort of reinforce too, it sounds like a lot, but when we think about AI and its implementation, we have developers, we also have a governance process that needs to be established around it. What this ethical AI framework does is it actually allows them to go faster because they, aren't trying to generate questions on their own. They actually have a working framework they can apply to make sure as they're developing or as a governance group is overseeing, the application of AI, they have standards to go by. They know what, the company or the organization or the school or the program or the research lab has set in place as these are the things that we want to be able to ensure that we're looking at. So it makes that process a heck of a lot easier. And it also allows the developers to know the standards they need to live to rather than spending a lot of work on something that isn't going to adhere to sort of the standards or principles. So I think that's really exciting. So how is Acuity using this framework today?
So we used the full framework when we piloted some prototypes for AI. So in that hypothetical scenario I was talking about, we were considering a tool that uses large language models to generate summaries for various data sets. And our group was formed of 8 different colleagues, our ML research scientists, other members of the research team, some of our developers, our security officer, someone from our customer success team. So again, different perspectives involved. And we all reviewed some documentation on how this hypothetical AI tool works and its purpose. And we split these questions, which again can seem daunting for one person to answer, amongst ourselves. And we drafted the answers for this hypothetical narrative synthesis tool, and then we used the learnings to further refine our questions. So I mentioned that because I also want to do a little plug here for this hypothetical scenario that we piloted the framework on. It's actually a potential use of AI we've done some research on with our co-authors at the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio. And if you'd like to hear more about this AI tool, and how large language models could be applied to summarizing curriculum evaluations in particular, please see our presentations at WAMC GIR, the Group on Information Resources, from May 2024, and WAMC LSL Learn Serve Lead in November 2024.
And we'll make sure we link that in the chat here. We'll attach the abstract for anybody that's not attending those sessions so you can see a little bit more about what has been done. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but wanted to make sure we add that resource too.
That's great, Kelly. And I just wanted to say that you were right on the money about how, this ethical framework helps us be faster, because even though we're not taking on all the 127 questions all at once, it has impacted our AI work, even in our research projects. So I'll quote our machine learning research scientist, Cole Walsh, who feels that even in the exploratory phases of these research projects, we're still keeping elements of the framework front of mind. So we're regularly thinking about what could go wrong with all of these tools, despite them even being proof of concepts. And this is important because incorporating these elements into our thought process sets us up for success later, like you said, for when we do decide to develop an AI tool. And currently, we are not in the development stage of any AI tool at Acuity, but we are considering using large language models for a formative assessment we are researching. And if we do decide to use any AI in our tools, then process-wise, we would gradually answer the relevant questions for each stage: design, development, implementation. We would compile the answers, and we'd also summarize the key information and share it on our website.
I know, Rodica, you ran a workshop at the Physical Therapy Educational Leadership Conference in 2023 on using ethical AI. I'm wondering if you can share with us sort of the reaction to that workshop at the time and sort of the impact that you saw from it, because I heard that it was greatly received and that lots of positive feedback. But being in the room as people are starting to think and talk about this, I'm wondering what you heard from that community of practitioners.
Kelly, you're so sweet. And yes, the workshop was so much fun. So several of our co-authors and research partners from U.S. physical therapy programs helped build and facilitate this workshop. So it was a collaborative effort between us. And I think we all were a bit surprised by the number of participants. I personally was expecting around maybe 30 or 40 people in the audience, but in the end, we had over 80 participants. And the purpose of the workshop was to facilitate conversations. So people have different levels of experience with AI and AI ethics, but ultimately, all of us are still very new at this. And AI impacts us in different ways depending on our roles. So again, about that perspective consideration, right? We wanted to make sure everybody could bring in and share their own experience. And I think that this is what the audience responded so positively to, the interactivity of the workshop, because we not only discussed AI concerns and the 5 principles of our framework, but we also had very interesting group discussions about the potential benefits some AI tools can bring. And again, we had this hypothetical scenario where we were 3 years in the future and we all had to think about potential issues and relevant mitigation strategies. And I just want to say this is very funny. So we were in October 2023, and this hypothetical scenario assumed a video generation tool, just like the one OpenAI announced in February 2024. So everybody laughed, "Oh my God, haha," in October. Oh, a video generation tool. And then in February, it became reality. So we are humbled that we heard lots of positive feedback from the workshop. But I think one of the most important lessons for me from the workshop was how prevalent the need for guidelines was. Participants really highlighted how crucial it is for their own institutions to have dedicated teams that develop guidelines for AI use for both students, faculty, and staff, because it's not just the students who are using AI, right? It's everybody. And to help monitor not only how AI is used at the institution, but also remain informed about how AI advances, how regulations advance, and so on and so forth. There are several other concerns, and you alluded to some of them earlier as well. There is a risk that the use of AI in education might lead to less reflection and hence superficial learning. So I'm a teacher. I use AI to develop, some exercise for my course. And then a student uses AI to answer the exercise that I developed for my course. So again, it's like AI versus AI. Who is learning what? I don't know. So that was a big concern. And in a similar vein, the thought was that relying on AI too much can lead to less autonomous decision making. So like it forces us to rely on AI, and then we would let AI decide for us, as it were. That was another concern. And the audience also identified the need for training around AI use and biases for both students and faculty. Because again, however experienced we are, nobody knows everything. And I think this was one of my favorites. The lesson was that we can use AI in the classroom, but we also need to teach critical thinking. So, for instance, students could be tasked with grading and editing assignments that were generated by AI and see what could be improved. Oh, okay, so this is false, or this argument doesn't make sense, or this is superficial. Because again, we do want to empower everyone to use AI responsibly, and using AI is becoming unavoidable, but we can still avoid some of the major risks around it.
So many good takeaways. It was clear that so many people are interested in doing this and doing it well and thinking about the impact of AI on the system. We know, and we've heard on other webinars or holistic success shows from others, that AI is changing the nature of the jobs that we're going to be doing in the future. And so it's about not ceding to AI everything that we're doing, but understanding how to integrate AI in, how we function, how we work, what we can do, and doing so in an ethical way where we understand the principles and the impact of it, because there are intended consequences to it, but lots of unintended consequences as well. So, Rodica, what is next for your work in ethical AI?
I am going to sound like a broken record, but learn more is next, because again, we need to stay on top of developments in AI and AI guardrails and reassess what we have and keep improving on our own framework even. And other than that, other than constantly learning, we're also contributing to a white paper on ethical AI in measurement and assessment led by Oken Bulut, one of our co-authors at the University of Alberta. It's a collaborative effort between members in academia and industry, and we intend to submit to a journal later this year. But I really want to emphasize this. We also really hope to hear from anyone who's listening to this episode or anyone who's reading the blog post. We would love to hear from you and your journey with AI and incorporate your perspectives into how we're approaching responsible AI here at Acuity. Again, everybody's perspective is different. And because we want to make sure that the AI is aligned with human values, we want to put those perspectives at the forefront.
I love that. And continuously bringing it back, knowing that this is a living document. It is going to evolve. It requires learning. It also requires, as you say, that white paper that's being written. We need to talk about where we are today. And that doesn't mean that it's not going to change, but where are we today? Where's our understanding today? So that we can understand the evolution of that. Because decisions are being made today based on what we know today, and that may change. So we've talked about a lot of different things. Rodica, if somebody wanted to develop their own ethical AI framework or start thinking about this, we've talked about it being daunting, but what's a great first step that they could take?
This is like writing a dissertation, right? It's a big chunk of information. So I think it's important to take small steps. We do have some resources on our website that people can refer to. We have both links to courses as well as our own ethical principles and some questions around them. So please review that. But because people are at different stages, it is going to be different from organization to organization. It's going to be different from person to person. So I think really what's really important is to also think about what are your values? What are your principles? What does your institution align with? And then go from there. So read up as much as you can, start small, bite size, and then try to understand how what you've learned applies to your case.
Rodica, just before we close, I'm curious if somebody looks at the Acuity AI ethical framework and says, you know what, this aligns to a lot of the things that we think about in our program. This has a lot of the things that we would want to consider. Is that something that they can use as a jumping off point or should take on and apply to their program? How would you recommend that?
I love that question. And I personally, I feel like the research team would be honored if that were true. If they felt that our principles, match with their own, we would love that. And the resources we have on our website also list questions for AI use. So we have defined the principles, but the questions aren't for developers, they're meant for AI users because we wanted that information to be useful for anybody who saw it on the website. So yes, please have at it, take it as a starting point. But I still, again, want to encourage people to really think about those questions and feel free to edit them, change them to suit your needs because maybe they work for us, but I'm sure that tweaks can be made to make them work better for you.
Absolutely. Just as we talk about programs evolving curriculum or assessments for their own mission and vision, so too should their ethical AI
Yes,
framework.
absolutely.
Thank you so much, Rodica, for sharing all of the insights and such a great discussion today. I really appreciate all your time and all the thoughtfulness that you and the incredible team at Acuity has put into this ethical AI framework. To all of you, thank you for watching and listening. If you haven't subscribed to our show already, please do so. Share this episode with any colleagues who you think might find it useful to start their own thinking about how to engage with AI. And with that, we'll catch you in the next episode. If you enjoyed this episode of our show, please be sure to check out the other episodes. And don't forget to subscribe. We have a new episode releasing every week.